I'm Christine Woody. I work for Empower Missouri and I help coordinate our food security coalition. Happy New Year. Here's to 2021. Our legislative session started on Wednesday, so we'll talk a little bit about some of the bills here in Jefferson City that have been filed already a little bit later in the agenda. The first thing I wanted to start out with today is I want to introduce to you our new executive director, Mallory Rush has joined us today, and I want to just have her spend a few minutes to talk a little bit about her background and kind of moving forward into 2021. So Mallory, go ahead.
Thanks, Christine, and good morning, everyone. It's nice to see you all. I am really excited to be joining the team here at Empower. I am coming up on 3 weeks on the job, so still very new and sort of getting my bearings around me. Very odd time to join an organization right around the holidays and heading into the legislative session. So lots of things are happening, but very, very exciting time for the organization and to work to make some significant changes across the state of Missouri. So Christine has filled me in on the great work that you all have been doing, and I am very excited to work alongside you to support that work in the weeks and months and years ahead. A tiny bit about me. You can, if you're really curious about my background, you can go to Empower's website and read the press release about my hiring. But I'm a St. Louis native. I've been working in the nonprofit sector here for the last 15 years. Very vested in the St. Louis community. I bought a house that I've lived in for the last 12 years, about a mile from where I grew up. So from any of you who are from the St. Louis side of things, I'm in Bevo Mill. So big fan of South City and very, very committed to both St. Louis and to the state of Missouri. So thrilled to be able to bring that passion and that work to the team here at Empower. And I welcome the opportunity to talk with any of you about your work, your organization's work, and your partnership with Empower. So I'm going to drop my email address in the chat. And if any of you would like to connect individually, please do feel free to shoot me a note and we will schedule some time in the next week or two. And with that, I will turn it back over to Christine.
Great, thanks, Mallory. The first person I wanted to kind of toss it over to right away is Lauren. She's from the Food Research and Action Center out in DC, who we work really closely on all of our national advocacy work around food security. I know Ellen Teller is also on the call from FRAC, but I believe Lauren's going to actually give our update. So Lauren, any news besides what we've all heard of happening in DC, but anything food security related would be fabulous.
Can you hear me okay with my mic?
Yeah.
Great. Well, first I want to say hello and welcome, Mallory. It's great to meet you over this Zoom, and we look forward to getting to know you and work more closely together. So hello, and hello to everyone else. I think I last joined your meeting just before the holidays, and a lot has happened since then. So I'll give an update, and then Ellen will tag team with me for anything else that we should add. So of course, this is the start to the 117th Congress this year, and I'm stealing a colleague of ours from the Hills words here, that she said it was a whiplash of emotions this week, and it's most certainly was. I know we were all experiencing that watching the news this week. You know, it's hard to get this update without at least acknowledging what happened on the Capitol, and it was very hard for all of us, you know, to watch that. But I'm very thankful for a community of advocates and champions who will move forward with all of the work that we do. On Sunday, it was officially the start of 117th Congress, and they were sworn in then. Of course, Nancy Pelosi was reelected as the Speaker, and this is related to our work. the composition of the House, because the House this Congress is more narrow than it was last time. So Democrats hold 222 seats and Republicans will hold 211, and there are 2 vacancies. So we're dealing with a very slim margin in this House. On the Senate side, as we know, the 2 Georgia Democrats won the Senate runoff race. So once they are sworn in, the senators from Georgia, and the vice president is inaugurated, Democrats will take also extremely slim majority of the Senate, because it'll be a 50-50 split, and Vice President Harris will be the but the Senate, the Democrats will take majority. So Chuck Schumer will be majority leader, and Democrats will head the committees. So we expect by the end of the month, the committees will be able to get started figuring out what their membership will look like. So that's critical to the committees that we work in. Of course, committees like Senate Agriculture Committee. So we hope to see some news coming out of there closer to the end of the month. Okay, so last time I dropped to this group, we talked about that bipartisan COVID relief package and what was happening with COVID relief. So as you probably know, that package, ended up spurring some negotiations late into into the end of December, and Congress passed, and the president did sign into law an end of year COVID-19 relief bill that was attached with an FY21 appropriations bill, which some people are calling the COVID bus. This was the Consolidated Appropriations Act of 2021. It included several critical nutrition provisions, including that SNAP boost that advocates have been working tirelessly for over the past few months, and some provisions on PEBT that I know are critical especially. So I'll go into that, but thank you so much to this group for all of your incredible advocacy over the last few months. I know it's been a marathon of advocacy nonstop, but we did it for now. We got some of these key provisions, and we'll work to ensure that we get a longer term package that we know we'll need to address the longer term needs. So I mentioned that SNAP boost. Of course, one key provision is boosting the maximum benefit by 15% for 6 months, it was great. We were anticipating it might have been a little lower in that bill, but our champions fought to get that boost for 6 months. So it'll go through June 30th of this year. And there were some other SNAP provisions like expanding benefits and eligibility for some unemployed individuals and college students, and of course, providing administrative funds to states, which we know is critical. So we do see these as a foundation with the next Congress and administration to build on. On the child nutrition front, it expanded PEBT or pandemic EBT for children under 6, ensuring that can actually be implemented, which we know is critical when kids, when childcare is closed, kids need that access to nutrition. And it also gave states certain additional flexibilities that were needed on the school-age children front for PEBT. So that was in there. There was some emergency funding for the Child and Adult Care Food Program, as well as school nutrition programs. There was a WIC task force related to online delivery, some funding for older Americans at nutrition programs like home delivered meals and congregate meals, and some needed flexibility and waivers for those programs as well, so they can keep serving older adults during COVID. And of course, there was funding for programs like TFAP, the Emergency Food Assistance Program, Commodity Supplemental Food Program. And then for the U.S. territories that unfortunately are not part of SNAP's entitlement, they get a block grant. There was some additional funding for nutrition support there. And then that's just nutrition. We all know there was critical anti-poverty and human needs provisions that are so important, like extending the eviction moratorium, unfortunately only 1 month, and extending pandemic unemployment, I think it was till mid-March, for instance. So some really critical provisions. Our message on the bill is that it was essential and necessary, and we applaud the work on it, but we do acknowledge that it's a down payment. It's a necessary first step that Congress needed to pass before the holidays, but we know that it still falls short of the longer term comprehensive relief that's needed to limit the depth and duration of this crisis that we're dealing with, especially on the economic side. So we know that this pandemic has long-lasting, effects on people's food security and just income security, housing security. And so certainly as we begin this new Congress, the next administration gets inaugurated and gets going, we know we need a longer term, more robust package, and we look forward to working with you all on pushing for that and shaping that. So on the horizon legislatively, of course, it will be, a stimulus package. We can expect to see that relatively soon this year, and also child nutrition reauthorization, CNR. And with the Democrats taking control of the Senate, we're likely to see that move a little quicker. So that's another thing to keep an eye out. I know a lot of us were working on that before the pandemic, and that kind of put a pause on everything. And then, the Biden-Harris administration, after inauguration on January 20th, the new administration will start to be in place. So then we can also begin to work on a lot of our key transition priorities and administrative actions as well. Ellen, do you have anything to add?
Thanks. No, I think you covered the landscape. The only thing I was going to add is that, as always, as anti-hunger and anti-poverty advocates, we have to be nimble, and that we know that the Biden administration has its own set of priorities that they want to push forward. And we can anticipate very early in this congressional session that there's going to be attempts to release packages that deal with different priorities, whether it be infrastructure, criminal justice reform, maternal child health initiatives. And clearly we have pieces that can get attached to all and any of these bills. And so we definitely want to be ready for when they come out. We've shared our priorities with the Biden administration, with our Hill champions. It's on our website, our transition and our administrative and legislative priorities. So as Lauren said, extending out many of the flexibilities and waivers that we got this year to respond to COVID are things we're going to be looking at on a more permanent basis. So just one example of, obviously, the SNAP benefit boost, we want to see that extended longer than June 30th. But pandemic EBT, we've been trying for years to get summer EBT during the summertime when kids are out of school and they're not getting their breakfast and lunch. Well, that's exactly what PEBT did. It provided a benefit to kids who were not in school. Well, why don't we have that in our country during the summertime when school is out, during winter break, and during spring break, when we hear stories of kids coming back to school hungry? So that's the kind of thing we're gonna try to push out in a reauthorization bill or in any stimulus or reconciliation bill that comes down the pike.
Anybody have any specific questions for Lauren or Ellen? All right, thank you both so much. You're more than happy to stay on the call if you'd like, but I understand things are a little busy. So if you need to hop out, feel free to just go ahead and do that. I did put FRAC's website in the chat, so feel free to go there. You can see all the priorities she was talking about, but they also have tons of research and data and reports out the wazoo of things that you can look at on any sort of food security topic you can imagine. So look through their website. It's very, very helpful.
And Christine, the only thing I wanted to say is that we have a lot of education that needs to happen with your particular congressional delegation. And any way that we can provide any kind of support, we've got a lot of resources we're planning to put out for new and returning members of Congress. And what we're spending a lot of time on is this notion that the only way we got this stimulus package was a group of centrist senators got together and worked from the center out. And I know in a state like yours, and just having been out to Missouri for your last conference, I got very well educated on the particular challenges of your delegation. And I think this notion of working from the center out would resonate really well in a state like yours. So looking forward to working with you guys on kind of following through on that notion.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. And I think those materials would be very helpful. And I hope over the next year, especially as CNR kind of comes up, we can set up some of those meetings with some of our delegation and kind of use that language. So I think that will be very helpful. Yeah,
Great.
Thank you so much.
Christine, can I ask you a quick question? This is Charles Bryson, Civil Rights Enforcement Agency Director in the city of St. Louis. I'm interested in food distribution because we cannot continue along the path that we're going with all the Urban League in St. Louis doing food distribution. Is there any sort of notion of how better ways to look at food distribution in the upcoming days, weeks, and months?
Great point. And the answer is yes. We are part of a larger food chain coalition that includes a lot of the environmental groups, sustainable agriculture, farmers markets, and others. And one thing we've learned through this process of COVID is whether it be a SNAP, someone on SNAP or a WIC recipient, not having options on getting food either through online services or having a convenient, not a distribution, a store in their neighborhood really impacted people in low-income communities disproportionately more than others. And we also know that this disproportionately impacts communities of color. So I think in any kind of packages moving forward, especially with Congress starting to entertain planning on a farm bill, which is where, you know, I think your senators and your delegation are going to be putting efforts. Working with these groups is going to be critically important to elevate this. And we're already working with groups like the NCL, the Leadership Conference on Civil and Human Rights, NAACP, and others on making sure that justice issues fall into our buckets in a much more profound way. And I think the one thing, look, we all knew this was happening long before COVID. COVID just was an opportunity to shine a light on communities that are disproportionately impacted. And my view is, you know, if there's an upside to COVID, we need to take this opportunity and run with it. So Charles, I'm so glad you brought that up because it is something we definitely have to invest more time and energy on.
Yeah, and I'll point out what Melissa put in the chat. I think the Missouri Coalition for the Environment is a group that is looking at some of that stuff. So I know they have a coalition that does that kind of work. And she put some information about who specifically to reach out to. So,
and before we go, to this point, we are doing our conference virtually this year, and a save the date is going out. And one thing, Christine, we are doing, and this also would be great for Mallory to know too, is we are trying to get people to do bulk registrations to get other groups that you partner with into the virtual conference. And so I was just talking to Catherine D'Amato from the Greater Boston Food Bank, and she's like, I'm gonna buy a bulk registration, and I'm gonna get my board, my warehouse employees, my staff, my volunteers, and partners that I'm working with on breakfast after the bell, or, you know, criminal justice reform or whatever. I want them to come in and see how the anti-hunger community needs to work with a broader cross-section of folks in our state. So I'm just planting that as an opportunity to do the kind of amazing coalition work that you guys do. And I saw it at the conference last year about all the people that were asking questions from different coalitions you partner with. And it just gets us all thinking about what our priorities should be moving forward. So another opportunity.
I understand about moving the conference virtually. That was the last thing that I did before it got down. Washington DC was the last thing outside that I have done, I think. So.
And that's true for everyone. Our conference was the beginning of March.
Yeah.
Remember, when the conference closed out, we got reports of 2 people who contracted COVID.
Yeah.
And the hotel was like, we have to close those guest rooms because of this thing called COVID.
Yeah.
And it was the last time we all got together.
Yeah, crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All
Well,
right.
thank you, Ellen. I appreciate it.
I've got to jump.
Yep, thank you.
But thanks for inviting us. And you know that we're always here to partner with you guys in any way we can. And it is a labor of love. So thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Ellen. Thanks, Lauren. Next, I want to loop in Caitlin. Caitlin Whaley is our liaison with the Department of Social Services here in Missouri. She is super gracious and joins our calls every month and gives us an update of what the department's doing and answers all of your questions related to your clients and your work. So Caitlin, thank you so much again for joining us and any updates you have.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. My updates are going to be even more dense than normal. There's a lot going on at the department in this line of work right now. So I'm going to try and cover a lot, but definitely I think it's going to be easiest if people kind of stop me as I go, because there's a lot, I've got a lot of content to cover. So I'm going to kind of start by covering PSNAP. You know, we obviously got reauthorized for January. The plan at the department is going to be to continue to make those requests as long as we meet, you know, the requirements. Obviously, I can't commit to that super long term, but that's definitely our plan. So right now, the big requirement we have to comply with is being under a state of emergency in the state. So the state of emergency in Missouri is currently set to expire in March. I don't know. I have no inside information about plans with what to do, you know, going forward past that, but at least 1 to 2 more months for sure that we'll probably be making that request for PSNAP. The next piece I'm going to cover, and I had gotten some questions from folks about this in email over the last week, is the 15% increase timing and implementation on that. So I'll start with the easy answer, which is timing. There is a lot of, obviously, if anybody who spent any time in knows, like our system we run SNAP on is not new. It was built in like the 1970s. So there's a lot of coding that is required to make any changes. We are anticipating that we will make distributions for the 15% on the 21st of January. And then subsequent to that, we hope to be making those distributions with people's regular benefits for January through June. So that brings me to the complicated part, which is the amount people are going to be getting. So I'm going to do my best to relay to you Missouri's understanding of the amount. And we are currently, there's a call with FNS this morning with Family Support Division staff to try and make sure that we are not making this more difficult than it has to be. So to put it as simply as possible, the 15% is going to be calculated based off of whatever benefit a household is entitled to based on income. So it's going to be, so if a household is regularly receiving the max benefit based on their income, then they would be receiving a 15% bump on top of the max benefit. If the household is at the very bottom end of the benefit spectrum, you know, they only receive $16 a month, the 15% would be calculated off of that amount. And then the one other piece I want to just point out is if households have reported an increase in income during COVID, while they haven't seen a change in their benefit amount because everyone's been receiving PSNAP, the 15% will still be calculated based off of that lower amount based on their income. So I think that's the easiest way I can explain it, but I want to pause here to make sure there aren't any clarifying questions on that before I move on. Okay. So the next thing I'm going to talk about PEBT. So Missouri was really, we were going to be like out of the gate super early, get our plan in. And then they passed the new COVID relief bill with a lot of additional information, not only about what assumptions could be used for PEBT in schools, but also clarification that childcare was included. So we kind of had to take a step back. We're currently working with DHSS to figure out how to qualify childcare facilities. I can share with you that my most recent update was that Rhode Island had received approval on a PEBT plan, and I can tell you that Missouri is using a lot of similar assumptions as Rhode Island. So, you know, we're hoping we'll have a smooth approval. The first application, you know, it took probably 15 back and forths with the first round of PEBT to get approval from the Fed. So it's by no means a quick process. One thing I do just want to share off the bat about one assumption is that Missouri's plan is to only issue benefits retroactively. There are a lot of strings tied to prospective benefits in the program. So whenever we would be getting around to you know, issuing these benefits, I mean, at this point, it's going to be into the spring. We would be looking back to the beginning of the school year, but there would potentially be a second issuance to cover any remaining months that we had that were still ahead of the school year, because it's just too many pieces to try and do prospective, and we don't want to be in a position of having to recoup benefits from families if for some reason schools go back to in-person learning. You know, as vaccinations start rolling out to educators, we know that the likelihood is you're going to see a lot of schools go back to more in-person. So that's kind of my update on PEBT. I also wanted to hit on the new federal unemployment benefits. So the $300 unemployment benefits that were just approved are not counted as earned income for SNAP. So we are working on a policy update with our staff to make sure that they understand that difference. So the state benefits would still count as earned income for SNAP, but that $300 federal benefit does not count as income. So I just wanted to make sure to update folks on that. I'm trying to look through the rest of my notes. I had a lot of stuff this week. You know, just in general, we're seeing a high volume of applications. November, you know, we had a lot of applications in November. I think that coincided pretty neatly with the fluctuations in unemployment. That continues to hit us really, really hard as unemployment kind of went back and forth and back and forth. People would apply and then they wouldn't follow up, and it's just kind of it's definitely a churn on our system. So those are kind of my updates, but certainly happy to, you know, answer any questions anybody has. Okay, so there's a question in the chat about applying through PEBT, why other states did direct issuance. So Missouri did do direct issuance for families that were already on the SNAP program, but there's not a mechanism to do direct issuance for families that are not engaged with the SNAP program in round one. What I can tell you about round two is, whereas in the spring, all schools were out, so you had a blanket eligibility of not receiving food in school, that does not hold true for this second round. So everyone is going to have to go through an application process, because we're going to have to make assumptions / certify that those children were not receiving meals at school. And just, that is honestly one of the most complex pieces of this. And we're not, if it were up to me, I would love to just have a parent say, my kid was full-time, my kid was part-time, but we're just not, that's part of the application or the approval process, is we're gonna have to see how far FNS is gonna let us push on, you know, being able to certify whether or not a kid had received meals at school.
Anyone else have any specific questions? All right. Caitlin, thank you so much. That was wonderful information to share. I really appreciate you taking time to join us, as always.
Thanks so much for having me.
Of course. All right, I'm gonna share my screen with you now, and we'll just go over a little bit about some of what's happening in Jefferson City with some of the bills that have been filed and with legislative session starting. I'm just gonna go over a couple of those things and talk about kind of these next couple of months. So let me figure out how I can do that. There we go. All right. Can everyone see that well enough? All right. As I said, legislative session started on Wednesday, January 6th. And these are the leadership in both of the House and the Senate. You can just look over their names. Anyone who knows or in the districts of those folks, they will be key in terms of moving legislation forward this upcoming session. So the Speaker of the House, Representative Rob Vescovo, leadership in the Senate, Senator Dave Schatz, and Senator Caleb Rowden are the key folks there. So there's been quite a few bills that have already been filed regarding food security and nutrition. This first list of bills are bills that are have increased restrictions or increased rule changes to make accessing SNAP and accessing our food security programs more difficult. This first one is Senator Bratton. He was just elected to the Senate. He was in the House for some time. I believe there was a break when he wasn't in either House or Senate, but he has just been re-elected to the Senate. And he filed this bill, which has been around in our state for quite some time, but has not completely passed. There's been lots of debate. This is when they will increase and change how work requirements for participants to access the SNAP program would be implemented. A similar bill was sponsored in the House by Representative Perkins. That's House Bill 217. It also modifies the provisions relating to work requirements. These sorts of bills have been passing and being debated in lots of different states across the country. So Missouri is not unique in that. I think, especially with this time of this pandemic and all that's happening, it just seems like a little more harsh than normal to be doing this sort of a bill, but it's here, and I will be curious to see how far it actually moves this session with everything else that they're going to be focusing on with the budget and other priorities they have. I'm not sure if this sort of bill will be a priority, so it'll be really interesting to see if these two bills move. Similarly, House Bill 451 and House Bill 247, they also implement some harsh changes to the program in terms of how you can be eligible and reduction of benefits. Similarly, I think that during this time of COVID and pandemic and people having much more difficulty than normal just getting through life, that having these additional changes to accessing the program and receiving the benefit are harsh. The first one deals with if you are not cooperating fully with the child support program in the state of Missouri, you will not be allowed to have SNAP, or your benefits will be radically cut. And similarly, if children are not meeting the school attendance requirements, they'll have a reduction in the public benefits that they can receive. It seems like if a family is having a difficult time meeting school attendance requirements, maybe you shouldn't cut them off of food benefits as well. So these are all just some punitive changes that they want to make to the food security programs, and we will see how far they move and the response that we get in this upcoming couple months as we see things moving forward. So if we do see them moving, if we see them get assigned to a committee, if we see them have a hearing that comes up, we will reach out to all of you and we will put some pressure on them to not continue to move those bills forward. I know definite testimony will be necessary if they do get to a committee. So we will share some action alerts and reach out to some of you individually to see if you can find some individuals to testify against those as we move forward. So put those all on your radar as some bills that we are following. The next group of bills are all bills that work to increase the safety net programs in our state. If you look through this list, you can see that all of the sponsors are from the minority party, which leads me to believe they will most likely not move that far or pass and get signed by the governor. But all of them are very positive bills, and I think we have an opportunity to do some education on them with other members of the House and Senate to potentially work towards getting some sponsors who probably have a much higher likely chance of getting something passed and signed into law. So I think these bills are great education tools that we can use as we move forward, meeting with legislators going forward. I was interested to see and surprised to see that Representative Mackey had sponsored like 6 or so bills that are related to around food security and nutrition programs. I don't remember him last year having all of those. I am looking forward to calling his office next week and setting up a meeting with him to kind of talk through them and seeing kind of where he's coming from with trying to sponsor these. So if anyone is interested in joining me in a meeting with him to just kind of talk through that, I would love for any additional folks to join me. So if you want to shoot me an email, if you're interested in being in a meeting with that, I'd be happy to entertain a few other folks besides just myself in that. So I don't know if Mallory, if you have access to the chat, I can't do that while I'm doing this. Just put my email address in there maybe for folks, but I would be happy to have a few more folks just to have a conversation with him about his interest in some of these bills. So, but mark all of these down on your kind of tracking list and kind of follow them through. If they do get a hearing, it would be a great opportunity for a lot of us to go and share our support for some of these programs and talk about the importance of them. So as they come through, I will definitely let everyone know as they move forward. And if we see them getting a hearing, we will do some actions around that. One way that you all can track these bills without having to do it on your own is we have bill trackers on our website. So if you go to our website, which is empowermissouri.org, up there at the top, there's a few different headers and one of them says bill trackers. And underneath that bill tracker category, we have our 3 coalitions, as well as 3 other issue areas that Empower Missouri long time ago had coalitions on, but now we don't have formal coalitions on, but we do track and are interested in the topic. We don't take the lead on those as much, but we are still concerned about health, mental health, human rights, and economic justice. So we do track the bills under all of those categories. So if you click on each, on one of those, it will pull up a screen and it will have all of the bills that have been filed that fall under each of those categories. So it's a great way to kind of just limit the scope. As you all may or may not know, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of bills are filed in our legislature every year. And many of those have nothing to do with anything that we're related to, like the state ice cream cone flavor, for example. So instead of having to, you know, kind of comb through each of those, this is a great way to kind of just focus on the issue that you care about and really kind of dive down into those issue areas. So I encourage each of you to look on that. Now I just want to kind of just do, if you have any updates on any of the issues that you all are working on, I am happy to kind of give the floor to anyone who wants to share any updates on any other legislation that you're following that I didn't mark down, because like I said, there's lots of them, or if there's any specific things that you're working on. So feel free to jump in. Nothing? All right. Just the last few things that I wanted to mention then before we wrap up today is we've decided that we're going to have these coalition meetings every other week on Friday, just to kind of give an update of what's happening in the legislative session, at least through legislative session, which goes to the middle of May. So the Food Security Coalition is going to meet every second and fourth Friday at 9 a.m. So our next one will be on Friday, January 22nd at 9 a.m. And then you can just put it on the calendar from now here until, you know, mid-May, end of May. Second and fourth Friday at 9 a.m. we will meet. And I will send out an email to remind you all, you know, the week before with the link and the registration information, but just so you can put that on your calendars. And then if anything specific is kind of happening in between, like you know how the legislature works, where they have a hearing is called and like 2 days later it's happening. If anything like that comes up, we'll follow up with it, kind of an in-between email with updates and calls to action and things of that nature. So, but we'll get together every 2 weeks to kind of give an overview and an update of what's happening. But do know that if something urgent is happening in between that, we'll be back in touch as well. And then, as always, Empower Missouri holds just educational forums. Before COVID, we used to do that in person in St. Louis and in Kansas City once a month. It's just on a different topic related to an issue that we're working on. Since COVID, we've moved those forums online, and we've teamed up with Kansas City and St. Louis to just do one forum a month instead of having multiple online forums because everyone is kind of zoomed out. Our spring forum series is going to be talking about that all politics are local, really understanding that what happens on the local, state, and federal level affects us all. And so our first one of those is going to be on Friday, February 5th at noon, and we'll really be diving down into local elections. So we're going to look at St. Louis and Kansas City specifically, what has happened on the local level here in the last 6 months, and then what's going to be happening in the elections in the next few months, and just how it affects each of us individually. So the information for all of that is on our website under the events section, the forums as well as our coalition meetings. So feel free to go to our website again, which is empowermissouri.org, to get all of that information for these upcoming events. Anyone have any final questions before we end for the day? We have been recording this, and so I will have the recording as well as the PowerPoint with all of the bills and such on the website by next week and under our Food Security Coalition page. So you can kind of go back to this and get any more additional updates that you missed as we were talking today. So I feel like there was something in the chat. Perfect. That sounds great. All right. Thank you all so much. Have a wonderful Friday, and we will be back in touch here in 2 weeks.